Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today for a special announcement regarding the investigation into the fatal shooting of Isaiah Mcnabb. Chief Larkin will be providing an update on the investigation and is joined by Ms. Kelly Mcnabb, the mother of Isaiah. Before we hear Chief Larkin, we would like to direct your attention to a short video that highlights the life of Mr. Isaiah Mcnabb.
Thank you very much, Ashley, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen and members of the media. What a privilege it is to be joined today by Miss Kelly Mcnabb, the mother of Isaiah Mcnabb. I think very shortly you'll see the courage, the strength, the love, and the advocacy of a mother. I'm very proud to be joined by Deputy Chief Hilton and Deputy Chief Crowell, along with Staff Sergeant Aaron Matthias and Constable Peter Collison of our Major Crime Unit, whose investigative commitment and leadership and care and compassion for the family, in my view, has been second to none. And so thank you. I just want to pause for a moment and ask all of you to reflect on the video you've just seen. The power of the video. A young man, 20 years old, full of life, finding his life, finding his journey, finding his path, a son, a brother, a friend, a student. These are all things that often we need to pause. And several weeks ago, myself and Deputy Hilton, along with our investigative team, had an opportunity to connect with Ms. Mcnabb. And it's not often, as the Chief of Police, that I have the ability or the opportunity to connect with the parent of a victim of a horrendous, tragic crime. I know that both Deputy and Hilton and I were tremendously moved by that meeting. And in many ways, it really reset much of our focus and our priorities. It was I credit Ms. Mcnabb with helping us as a police service in our journey in some challenging times. And so again, I'd like to thank all of you for attending today. I'd also like to thank you for your ongoing coverage of this investigation into the fatal shooting of Mr. Isaiah Mcnabb. Today, with the support of Chair Karen Redmond and members of the Police Services Board, We are announcing a financial incentive and a cash reward to anyone who provides credible information that leads to the arrest and successful prosecution of the person and/or persons responsible for the murder of Mr. Mcnabb. Before I share more on the reward, I would like to provide a brief overview of what transpired on September 20th, 2018, and what has brought us here today. On September 20th, 2018, thousands of citizens were starting a journey in the city of Waterloo in support of the annual United Way campaign. And they were making their way from uptown Waterloo to downtown Kitchener. At the same time, as I was traveling to the area, I was advised of a terrible incident that occurred in broad daylight in our community. On September 20th, 2018, at 11:15 a.m., our service responded to a parking lot in the area of Pandora Avenue and King Street East in the city of Kitchener, where we received multiple 911 calls about a shooting. Upon arrival, Isaiah Mcnabb, 20, was located, and he was discovered, and he was pronounced deceased as a result of multiple gunshot injuries. 11:15 a.m. on King Street East in the city of Kitchener. A white four-door Mercedes, a CLA 250 vehicle, was seen leaving the area. It had two individuals inside the car, and our service learned that the license plates were stolen. Those plates were BZBP153. The vehicle left the area. It was eastbound on Highway 8 towards Highway 401. It exited briefly on Highway 6 South. It traveled a short distance and then returned to the eastbound lanes on Highway 401. And we're aware of this because one of our officers from the South Division observed that vehicle on the 401. We had coordinated multiple units to provide support to this complex, tragic investigation. The officers in South Division were joined by the Highway Safety Division of the OPP and engaged in a suspect apprehension pursuit that involved multiple units from our service as well as our colleagues at the OPP. These suspects were brazen in their escape. They were brazen in their habits of fleeing our service and the OPP. They put innocent motorists at risk, and they traveled at high speeds throughout our region, throughout Halton and Peel region, and unfortunately, as a result of their driving, we were not able to make an apprehension, which I'm sure is a difficult thought for those officers involved. The vehicle was last seen on Highway 401, where it exited on Trafalgar Road in the city of Mississauga at 11:48 a.m. This is within 30 minutes of the activity, which shows you how challenging and complex these investigations are, as well as the transient nature of the crime that we find within our community. Let me be clear. This is a tragic situation. This involved an execution-style murder. 11:15 a.m. on King Street East in the city of Kitchener. Mr. Mcnabb was executed and left deceased at the side of a roadway. Our investigative team, led by Sergeant Austin and Constable Pete Hart-Collison, have continued to work diligently, relentlessly, tirelessly to find those and that individual or persons responsible for the death of Isaiah. Last year, we released a video on the anniversary of the death of Mr. Mcnabb that showed the moments leading up to the murder. It also showed the white Mercedes after the homicide as they fled the region. Our investigative team believes that that vehicle is integral, and those that were in the vehicle are involved in the death of Isaiah. This September, on the second anniversary of Mr. Mcnabb's homicide, we once again, with the family's permission and Kelly's strong advocacy, appealed to the public with anyone with information to come forward. Unfortunately, these appeals have not led to the information that our investigators require to advance this investigation. Our investigative team firmly believes and strongly believes that there are people who know exactly what happened to Isaiah and why this happened to Isaiah. We believe there are witnesses and or people with information that have yet to come forward. And that can be due to fear, intimidation, which often is an insidious part of these investigations. We understand the fear. We understand the vicarious trauma that this death has on many. There's a significant, when somebody loses their life in such a style in our community, there's a ripple impact and a tremendous impact on many beyond the pain and the loss that none of us can understand that Kelly and her family is experiencing. This was a brazen, planned execution style murder. It took place at 11:15 a.m. It took place in the lunch hour with a nearby busy, vibrant high school, patrons, local businesses, pedestrians, and many other people that were in the area. We know that there were people going about their day, whether they were at work, attending classes at the local high school. Many people, we believe, witnessed something that day that potentially continues to haunt them. Mr. Mcnabb, Kelly, Isaiah's sisters, and extended family, friends, and loved ones deserve justice. In our continued efforts to solve this homicide, the Police Services Board has authorized our investigative team to issue a reward of up to $50,000 for information that leads to the conviction of those responsible for the fatal shooting of Isaiah. Before I take your questions, I would like to welcome Ms. Kelly Mcnabb, who's joining us today. Kelly has continued to liaise with our investigative team throughout this investigation. We are grateful to Ms. Mcnabb for her ongoing support of our investigators, but more importantly, for her incredible strength, her incredible determination, her strong advocacy on behalf of her son, Isaiah. As I said, Deputy Hilton and I had what I would refer to as the privilege to spend time with Kelly. It's the most moving meeting I've ever had in my role, and I'm extremely proud of Kelly's advocacy and her love for her son Isaiah, who joins us today. I'll turn the microphone over to Kelly.
Good morning. My son Isaiah was, and always will remain, the love of my life. He was murdered at just 20 years of age. The day that he died, my world went dark. I lost my son, his father lost a son, 2 sisters lost a brother, a grandmother lost her grandson, aunts and uncles lost their nephew, cousins lost a cousin, his girlfriend lost her boyfriend, and countless friends lost someone that they loved as a brother. The morning of September 20th, 2018 started out like any other morning. Isaiah and I were texting one another up until an hour before he was killed. We were discussing opening a new bank account and which kind would suit him best. He was 20 years old and trying to make smart decisions, which he often consulted me on. My heart would swell with love every time I thought of how far he had come. Now, when I think of my son, the thoughts are rarely just of my love for him or our time together. My thoughts are almost always marred by the brutal way in which he was killed. A death by homicide is different from death by any other means. Another person caused the death of my son deliberately and with malice. Isaiah's murder was extremely violent. He was ambushed while looking down at his phone with earbuds in his ears. By all eyewitness accounts, Isaiah never saw it coming and had no time to react or to defend himself. The shooter exited the car and immediately shot my son, causing him to slump over. He then stood over my son and riddled both his head and body with bullets. Isaiah was slaughtered and left to die in front of traumatized bystanders who watched as blood poured from that picnic table and the people responsible drove off. Now I realize how horrifying this is to hear from most people, but I want you to take just a moment and imagine how I feel. Because that was my little boy laying there. When Isaiah was murdered, he was on day parole at New Directions, a halfway house. He had entered the criminal justice system at 19 years old, having made a serious mistake. He could have just as easily continued down that destructive path. But what led my son to New Directions was his commitment to healing, to restitution, and to a productive future. He had made huge gains through employment, counseling, and his next step was going to be college. Isaiah was doing so well, he had approval to move back home with me come December. He did everything we could ask of a young person who had made a dire mistake, and he should be standing here as a living, breathing example of a successful rehabilitation story that is the ultimate goal of our criminal justice system. Instead, he is dead. It is now my duty to cry out for justice for him. Sadly, this is the way I now parent my son in his absence. To those who have information about this case but are not speaking up, whether it is due to fear or this ridiculous don't snitch culture, I say to you, what if it was your mother standing up here? What if it was your 5-year-old sister who lived in fear that the bad guys are going to come back and hurt the rest of her family? What if it was your older sister living daily with the pain of losing her very best friend in the world? And what if it was your girlfriend left with a broken heart because the love of her life was ripped away from her? You have the power to help us get some semblance of closure, to hold accountable those who inflicted this trauma on us, and you have the power to stop more people from getting hurt or killed. And now you can also receive a cash reward for your information. I am pleading with you, please, do the right thing and contact the police or Crime Stoppers and tell them what you know. I miss my son in ways I never knew existed before his death. Over and over, day after day, I have to face the fact that my son was murdered. Unless you have been through this nightmare, you will never understand the trauma that I carry within me. Anytime I see a white car with heavily tinted windows, I tense up. Hearing the name of certain organs in the body takes my breath away, knowing that Isaiah was shot in them. For a long time after his death, what I wanted most was to die myself. My heart will forever ache for my son, but I know I have to go on living. I will fight until my last breath to see that everyone involved in his murder is held accountable for their actions. I will not give up. Please, do the right thing and help me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, for your courage and your remarks. Chief Larkin and Kelly Mcnabb will now answer any questions you may have about the investigation.
Well, again, just before we take questions, thank you, Ashley, and I think you can see the strength of Miss Mcnabb. I think she's a beacon of strength, and I'm not sure how she does it, but I think that this shows insight into why the work of our investigative team and why they're so committed to bringing a sense of peace. I don't think that we can ever bring closure, but I think we can bring a sense of peace. And so I hope that all of you recognize that there is a story. There's a story to every homicide victim. Today we're telling the story of Isaiah because we believe the case is solvable. And you've heard a very public appeal from the mother. And I'm urging anyone with information and or if those responsible are hearing us, please contact your lawyer, make arrangements to meet our investigators, and turn yourself in. It's the right thing to do. It's the responsible thing to do. And we've heard from Ms. Mcnabb, at the end of the day, there needs to be some sense of peace. And so pleased to take questions. We'll respect the public health guidelines, and so we'll please apologize. We'll move back and forth. And I know, we'd like to be side by side, but it's just not feasible or possible. I do also encourage that anybody that may be listening, this can be traumatizing. It can also be triggering, and so if you do need support, we do encourage those that may be watching and or viewing media footage. There are resources in our community, including 24/7 operated by CMHA. This is very challenging, courageous conversation of Kelly, so thank you. Do you want to give Kelly questions first or myself?
This is for you. I'm wondering, the vehicle was seen in Mississauga. Are other police services assisting Waterloo Regional Police Service in the investigation?
So with all investigations from the onset, the nature and the transient level of the investigation has obviously broadened beyond our region. That particular vehicle, as we alluded, the license plates were stolen. We've not been able to actually recover and or retrieve the vehicle, and so this is an active investigation, and hence we're very much engaged with GTA Police Services as we advance the investigation. Obviously our investigative team is doing the bulk of the work, but we continue to liaise. And on the day of 2018, we're very grateful for the support of OPP and Peel Regional Police Service for all their assistance and support. And I think obviously, when you look at the transient nature of what's happening in our region, we have to look beyond our region. So it's not solely focused locally. We'll broaden our tentacles, and obviously we hope that this information traverses itself across the GTA and prompts other individuals to actually come forward and or support the investigation.
You had mentioned that you believe there are people that have information that aren't coming forward. Do you believe that there are people in Waterloo region and in this community that could help solve this?
Yes, absolutely. Our investigative team has conducted and followed up on more than 100 investigative leads. So to show you some substantial work that has been ongoing, our investigative team has not been sitting idle, although we're at a point in the investigation where Ms. Mcnabb, and I credit Ms. Mcnabb for her leadership and advocacy coming forward, asking what else could be done in the investigation, hence the release today of the reward. But our investigative team firmly believes that there are people that have knowledge and or information and or have participated in the murder of Mr. Mcnabb locally and beyond. We also believe that, the 100 investigative leads that we followed up on, we've actually touched point with those that are involved and have information. And so, but we need more information. The complexity of judicial systems and the complexity of laying charges is not easy. And we need individuals to corroborate, to support, and to give thrust to the investigation. And so our investigators believe that if there's just one piece that allows us to turn something over, it can give significant thrust and allow us to advance the investigation to a point where we're looking at making arrest and or laying charges. But it shows the complexity. We've been working on this for 2 years. And although we've made progress, we need more information.
And you had mentioned that the license plates were stolen. Are you able to say where they were stolen from or when?
I don't have that particular information. Our investigative team would be pleased to support you. But obviously we're always very cautious. This is an active investigation, and it's those types of inquiries at that, intricacy of detail are best left to the investigative team.
How often is it that a cash reward would be offered 2 years after an incident, and why is it taking so long?
Well, this is a unique approach for our service. The last cash reward we offered in relation to an investigation was in the 1990s. It doesn't take away from Crime Stoppers that offers cash rewards on a regular basis, but not to this magnitude. Our investigative team has had a very strong relationship with Kelly and her family, and the concept and idea of doing something different actually came from Kelly. And I applaud and I credit her leadership for coming forward saying, like, what would it take and would you consider this? Our investigative team considered it. They felt that it was a excellent investigative supporting tool to come forward, and obviously with the support of the Police Services Board, we're making this announcement. Moving forward, I think that the advocacy of Ms. Mcnabb, that financial incentives and rewards will become a focus of all of our investigations when they get to a certain point. The complexity of a homicide investigation is significant. It's labor intensive, it's resource intensive, it uses many different traditional investigative opportunities. Of course, in today's world, technology plays a significant part. And so our team continues to evolve and move things forward. And so essentially the investigators came forward and said, we believe this is a great idea from Ms. Mcnabb to actually add some support. And we, obviously with the blessing of Chair Redmond and the board, we've moved this forward, but it will definitely change our strategies. I think it's important. I think that all of us as humans, dates are important. And so our connection and our tie to the 2-year anniversary, is something that's very important, because those individuals who may have witnessed something, those individuals who may have been responsible, September 18th means something to them too. And there's something within them that is torturing them. I couldn't imagine living with such guilt, with such a brazen act. And so, when we look at, from an investigative perspective, anniversaries are important. One, they're important to connect with the family and to support the family. But as well, it's also to actually reach out to anybody that may have information. There may be somebody that was there that day that has been fearful to come forward for various reasons, and we understand that. But if we make a connection to September 18th, 2018, 11:15 in the area of King Street East in Pandora, we're hoping that this creates the opportunity for somebody to come forward and say, I'm going to meet with the investigative team. And we're hoping that the public appeal and the disclosure and the demonstration of Ms. Mcnabb's heart will actually encourage those to come forward. And so that's essentially what led us here today. But the police service, we take no credit. All the credit goes to Ms. Mcnabb. This was her advocacy. It was her connection with the investigators. I know she shares a very close relationship with our investigative team, and I'm very proud of our investigative team, but essentially extremely proud of Ms. Mcnabb for coming forward to provide our investigation with thrust. It's a new approach for us, and so we're likely going to advance this in other investigations.
Any other further questions?
Maybe one more for Larkin.
Rich.
I'm just wondering, this is the second anniversary, second year of Isaiah's death. I'm wondering how many, calls have police received with information about what happened that day, and of those, calls, have they led police to any new information?
Well, again, I'll speak in general terms that we followed up on 100 investigative leads. To give specific timelines, et cetera, I'm going to remain, that just to say that our investigators have followed up actively on 100 leads. That being said, we believe that there's more investigative leads. We also believe that within those 100 investigative leads that we've likely touched point with individuals that have more information, and we're appealing to them to share more information. Obviously moving forward, we're hoping that today's announcement will actually bring a renewed sense of energy to the investigation with people coming forward. And that will spur other potential public information and communication dialogue. But today it's really about announcing the reward. But more importantly, it's actually about telling the story of who Isaiah was. It's telling the story of who Kelly Mcnabb is, a mother, grieving, without her son. And so our investigators, their whole commitment is to actually go visit Miss Mcnabb and say, we've made an arrest. So the officer that made the first door knock to deliver the tragic news of the loss of Isaiah, I know that his ultimate vision, his ultimate goal, his ultimate passion, and everything he comes to work for every single day is to actually go back to that house and knock on the door to deliver the news that we're moving through the justice system. Justice will be served. And so I think that that's the importance of today and the poignant of taking us back to September 18th. I think that that's what essentially everything is today about, is about supporting Miss Mcnabb and her family.
Any further comments? Questions?
Thank you once again for being here today and for this significant announcement. I would like to echo the words of Kelly as well as Chief Larkin that we know that there's those who have information that would assist in this investigation. No matter how significant or insignificant you may think that information is, please come forward and contact our investigators. You can also leave an anonymous tip with Crime Stoppers. This homicide can be solved, but we need your help to do that. Thank you. This concludes our media conference. For media members who are here, we have printed copies of the media release along with our posters. Please see Sherry Greeno for those. For those media members who have joined us virtually, our media release regarding the reward has been posted onto our website, and it can be found at wrps.on.ca. Once again, thank you all for joining us.